Hello and welcome to Money Matters TV. I'm Mike Dever, your host today and founder of Brandywine Asset Management. Brandywine's a 40 plus year old investment firm that has managed money for some of the world's largest banks, hedge funds, high net worth investors. And today we specialize in providing retirement funds for 401k and other qualified retirement plans. And what we do that's different in those funds is we um, refer to them as Brandywine Enhanced Funds because we provide downside protection with the intent of recovering from higher lows and producing potentially greater returns over time because recoveries don't have to be as large to recover from those losses. Today's show, we have Dr. Maria Maccecchini, who is the CEO of Annovis Bio. And this is there'll be an encore presentation. She's been on the show a few times, and we're looking for updates on the clinical trials of their drugs. Um, we do accept audience questions on Money Matters TV, and if you're interested, here's how to send in your questions to Money Matters.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says Send Us Your Questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, M-O-N-E-Y, -matters, M-A-T-T-E-R-S, TV.com.
Thank you. And we're very excited to bring on the show Dr. Maria Maccecchini of Annovis Bio.
Thank you so.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you for showing up on the show and being back here. We really appreciate it. And it's always entertaining and interesting what you have to tell us when you come on the show.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. And thanks for having me on. As Mike said, it's not my first time on the show. The first time I came, I told you that we had a novel approach to Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, and we were going to get started. In humans, we had plenty of animal data then. Then the second time I told you we had phase 2 data in Alzheimer's and in Parkinson's, and that in both indications, we saw statistically significant data in improving movement in Parkinson's and improving cognition in Alzheimer's. However, the sample size was small. And in order to prove to the FDA, but also to the world, that your drug works, you need to do large studies. So we are doing 2 studies, phase 3 studies, which is really the last study you do before you show the FDA that your drug works. You're doing 2, one in Alzheimer's, one in Parkinson's. And actually today, we just finished recruiting 520 patients into the Parkinson's study. The Parkinson's study is a 6-month study. So if the last 2 patients were recruited today, that means we have to treat them for six months. And so by the end of November, the study will be done. We will then analyze the data. And sometimes around the end of the year, we will have data of 520 patients in phase 3 in Parkinson's disease. What we are measuring is not just the movement of the patients, but also how the patients feel. Because the FDA is very interested in wanting to know not just that it improves your movement, but also that it improves you as a human being. We also started an Alzheimer's study in 320 patients. It was started earlier this year, and so far we are about 40 patients into the study. With a little bit of luck, we do hope to finish it around the end of the year. So from when I joined you first to now, we went from phase 1, 2 to phase 3 in Alzheimer's and in Parkinson's disease.
Well, congratulations. A couple questions on that. What makes the 520 or 320 the number? How do you determine how many patients you need to have in each trial?
That's an excellent, excellent question. Because our phase 2 data is really too small, or was too small, for us to 100% determine the number of patients. So, in some ways, it's a lot of statistics, but when you don't have very good numbers to start out with, you also have to make some educated guesses. And so, our educated guess was that around 500 patients would be enough for Parkinson's, and around 300 patients would be enough for Alzheimer's. We may be wrong. But this time, in both studies, we have enough patients that for the next study, we will be 100% capable of predicting how many patients we'll need in the next study.
So there will be a study beyond the phase 3 that you're doing now?
Yes, the FDA always requires 2 phase 3s,
I
always,
see.
for any indication, yes.
Okay, so this one will give you the indications of what you need to do as far as size of the sample set for the next phase of phase 3.
Well, if the data is statistically significant, even though we may change it a little bit for the second study, we will have the 2 studies. If the data is not statistically significant because our guess wasn't good enough, then we'll have to do an additional 2.
And so if you have the studies completed for Parkinson's November and maybe for Alzheimer's year end, does the second half of it get started right away? And when will you have the results from that?
That is an excellent question. And unfortunately, I really don't know. And the reason I don't know are twofold. One is we want to develop our drug not just for one population. Like now, right now, we are treating Parkinson's patients that are mild to moderate for 6 months, which means we could say we treat mild to moderate Parkinson's patients short term. But ideally, I would like to treat mild to moderate to advanced Parkinson's patients short and long term. So for long term, 6 months isn't enough. We would need 18 months. For advanced, obviously, we are not treating advanced right now. So we have written a letter to the FDA to ask for a meeting. And the meeting asks them, how many studies do we have to do, and how do these studies look to get early, moderate, advanced, short, and long term? Ideally, I'd like to do all of them. And if we do all of them, and if we have enough money to do all of them, because it gets expensive, very expensive, then we should be done in 3 to 4 years.
Okay. Is it likely that sometime through that period, a larger company joins up with you as they start seeing these results that enables you to go through all 5 or whatever levels, long term, short term, or is this something you continue to fund on your own?
It is very likely. I was telling you that our phase 2 looked good, and people acknowledge it looks good, but they also say, well, it's a small sample. Now, with 500 patients, it's very hard to say it's a small sample.
Right.
It's not a small sample. So yes, however, look at the return on investment. If we had both phase 3 studies, or if we had 3 phase 3 studies, a long and a short one, an early and an advanced one, we would be worth so much more than if we sold when we have one study. Mm-hmm. So if I can raise the money, we will definitely do it a big part of the way ourselves. At some point, we will partner, because realistically, selling into the Alzheimer's and Parkinson's market takes a huge sales force, takes a huge organization, and we are very virtual, but also, do we really want to scale up that much?
Right. So from a financial standpoint, ultimately you end up with a partner for distribution, but you carry it as far as you can.
Yes.
On your own to increase valuations, because I would imagine, valuations could be dramatically increased, multiples, as you hit these different milestones. So is that something then that is you're raising now, or is that next year you do that?
And it's going to be a lot easier to do with good phase 3 data.
Got it. Okay, so you'll be looking for the completion of this sometime next year. Then you go out and raise money to continue to expand the studies. Yes. Okay. Now, how is it that you have one drug that's going to be valid, and be able to be effective in treating two, but it seemed to me, apparently they're not, entirely different, diseases.
Well, if it was obvious, we would have had a much easier time. We have had a really hard time because people don't believe it. They're two totally different diseases. How can it be the same? There is actually a really strong similarity between Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, but also between ALS and multiple sclerosis and Huntington's. All neurodegenerative diseases show very high similarities. And if rather than looking at the way that the symptoms show each themselves, in Alzheimer's, you lose your memory. In Parkinson's, you lose your movement. How can that be the same? Well, it is the same. Let me explain why. Nerve cells have a body in the brain. And then they have long arms that go to your periphery. They also go from one part of the brain to the other part of the brain. That information moving through the arm is what makes a nerve cell efficient and functional. Because if there is no information flow, you don't exist. You may have a nerve cell here, but it doesn't pick up any signals and you can't give it any signals. Well, that information flow is impaired, it's slowed by 30 to 50% in every single neurodegenerative disease, everyone. And when that information doesn't work, something doesn't work. So if your thinking is impaired, it's because from here to here, you don't have good information flow. If your fingers don't work, it's because from here to here, your information doesn't work. And if you slur your speech, it's because the nerve cell to your tongue don't function well. In all cases, the flow of information and the speed by which a nerve cell moves and thinks and does things is slowed. That is identical. It's just different nerve cells in different parts. So if you look at it this way, every single nerve cell in every single neurodegenerative disease has the same disease, even though it's caused differently.
Wow.
And what our drug does, it speeds up the nerve cells. It makes them function normally.
So there's likely then multiple other diseases that you can be targeting.
Yeah.
Did you pick these two initially because of the larger ones, the better market, or how did you select Parkinson's, Alzheimer's versus whatever any number of others that are available?
I took the two biggest ones.
Okay.
I took the two most unmet needs. I took the two biggest problems. Now, from a patent point of view, I have patented everything. We have prion disease, ALS, Huntington's, frontotemporal dementia, tauopathies, alpha-synucleopathies, MS.
Right.
I have really, the patent covers pretty much every neurodegenerative disease. But in terms of developing it, I picked the two biggest one, yeah.
And were all those patents accepted?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they're granted.
Yeah. And then when do those expire? How long do you have to come to market with those other treatments?
That's a good question. I have learned a lot about patents, okay? Yeah. And basically right now, with the patents that have been granted to date, not with all the ones that we imagined later, we are covered until 38.
Okay.
But we have gotten very good at writing patents. So the newest patents we wrote go to 44, but they haven't been granted. They are applications. But the last one to be granted goes to 38.
Okay. All right. Well, you've got some running room to keep rolling these out. Now, you had mentioned something, and I'm a small business owner as well, and entrepreneur, and about it was difficult. The path is difficult, and I know with any business, you're running a public company, you've got to deal with shareholder suits, you've got to deal with failed trials or things that didn't perform as well as you think they should have. How do you recover from those? How do you keep the investors comfortable, the employees motivated? Because nothing's a straight line success story. And how do you get through those dark times?
That is, I don't know, it seems like, if you think I've been working on this for 13 years, and for over 10 years, I've been called crazy. In the last 3 years, I've been called semi crazy. What I mean by this, a few people converted, but a whole bunch still thinks I'm crazy. It's not possible. Besides, just think, here is Big Pharma, right? And then there is me. Why am I right? Well, because
Hmm.
I am, okay? That's a minor detail. I'm 100% sure I am. But the truth is, if you ask anybody and you tell them that Big Pharma doesn't believe a word I say, they will not believe a word I say. And I was a little disappointed that after really, really good phase two data, I mean, look, I'm not exaggerating. The phase two data was really good. That then the criticism was, well, not enough patients. But, we got enough money to do the phase three, and we'll show it. And the reason I'm 900% sure that the drug works, that we have already, as I said, enrolled 520 patients, but already I think something like 23 or so have finished the 6 months. And they all told their doctor they feel a lot better. Now,
Okay.
we don't know whether they are placebo or not. They could all be imagining it, but we have a lot of anecdotal evidence that the patients feel better. We had a lot of anecdotal evidence in our phase two study. So we are seeing the exact same thing. Patients tell us it works. Even
Okay.
if some of them are placebo, some of them are not. So sometimes I think I'm just Teflon.
So do the ones that have finished the trial, do they continue to take, or they're done until the trials? I mean, if they don't have an option of being able to continue,
Well,
or
they all would like to us to keep them on drug. The reason
right.
I'm not doing it is two reasons. One is I want to discuss it with the FDA, but the other is we don't know the exact dose because we are doing two doses now, and we'll only know which dose is better at the end of the study. It's double-blind, placebo-controlled. I have no clue. We
Yeah.
also don't know if we have subgroups of patients, like making this up. People with blue eyes respond better than people with dark eyes, or people with crooked noses respond better than people with straight noses. I don't know. So after we have evaluated these 520 patients, we will know what dose is better. And we'll also know if there are patients that respond very well. So we should push that part, and patients that don't respond. Because then it doesn't make sense to give it to everybody. Then we will take a group that responds very well. Well, there is no way we can know that until the study is done, which means early next year.
Yeah. So one of my questions about that, it was, or is there some sort of genetic testing that goes so you can sort of start matching up and saying, hey, this genetic structure is better suited than this one, or requires a lower dose or a higher dose? Is Are you able to do that as part of
Well,
these
we
phase
will
three?
be able to do that. We are measuring everything now.
Okay.
But until we know which patients respond how, we have no way of knowing
Right. Okay.
because we don't know what they need to be or what they should be. Or, as I said, right now we are casting a very, very broad net. We are taking everybody who is mild or moderate,
Hmm.
as long as they don't have very strong comorbidities. But then we will look at and we analyze everything, and then we'll find out who responds to what.
So at that point is when you would go and try to identify genetic markers that might be more favorable. Yeah, okay. So how
And
does,
we may not find it.
yeah,
I'm swimming against the current again when I say that. But remember, I told you in every single neurodegenerative disease, nerve cells go sluggish. Well, if it's true in all of them, and if our drug improves the speed in all of them, then
yeah,
maybe the genetic marker may be there for Huntington's or for ALS, but it doesn't affect our drug. But I
right.
don't know.
Okay. All right. So how, I mean, there's been drugs recently approved for Alzheimer's. How do you compare to those drugs? What's different? I mean, I know you're focusing on nerve, sort of essentially improvement, regeneration. Um, I think weren't those all going after the amyloid plaque
No,
approach, or no? That's
none of them
different.
do that.
Okay,
You remove amyloid plaque and absolutely nothing happens
that's what I
to
thought.
your brain.
Okay, right.
But in all fairness to amyloid plaque, we have 3 drugs now, 2.5, but the third one is probably going to get approved also. The Aduhelm by Biogen, Leqembi by Biogen Eisai, and Donanemab by Eli Lilly. Eli Lilly hasn't been approved yet. They're all 3 A beta antibodies. They all remove plaque. And if you look at the data, even though they're going to find that they kind of shuffle it a little bit different, but the data is pretty much the same. It is a really good step in the right direction. All 3 drugs improve cognition around 25 to 30% above placebo. That sounds pretty good. Now, let me give you the opposite. Placebo drops by 100%. So 25% above placebo is 75% worse. It's a step in the right direction. Is it that good? Not really. But it's a step in the right direction. Now, why do I believe that our drug does a lot better? Will do a lot better. It did a lot better in phase 2, but remember, small group of people. The reason I believe our drug will do a lot better in a bigger study is that in the brain of an Alzheimer or a Parkinson patient, there is more than one toxic protein. These 3 drugs all remove A beta, which is plaque. There is tau. They don't touch it. There is alpha synuclein. They don't touch it. There is TDP-43. They don't touch it. Well, if you have 4 toxic proteins and you just remove one, you still have 3 left. Our drug removes all 4 toxic proteins. So I really hope, and I know this is a forward-looking statement, but I really hope that our drug stops the disease.
Well, yeah, we all do. I mean, that'd be phenomenal. So then, I mean, I had mentioned amyloid plaque. You're saying that, they're not doing that. I know that was a path that seemed like for a decade plus they were going down. So how has the research evolved? Is there anybody else that's taking your approach? What are the different approaches right now that look
Yes
most
and
promising?
no. What's interesting is because pharma has been doing A beta for 20 years, and for 20 years, only recently do we have data, not very good data, but we have data. A lot of different approaches have evolved in the last 5 years. For a long time, there was just nothing else. It was A beta. And then there was tau, but remember, tau is also just one toxic protein. You still have the other 3. So I would say tau improves again by 25 to 30% once we get there. So what the new approaches do, all of them, is something totally different. Now, interestingly enough, none of us do the same thing. None of us. But every single one of us, and there may be 7, 8 companies out there that try something else, all of us do something totally different. That could be inflammation, it could be sugar metabolism, it could be energy metabolism, it could be inflammation again, it could be synaptic health, synaptic growth. And I think this is wonderful because while not all of us will succeed, at least we can see other approaches and then figure out how other approaches integrate with what is in the brain. So I'm very, very happy that we have novel approaches.
Okay, and so the approach that you are taking, the patents you have, is it a broad enough approach, sort of a field that you're taking that other people could jump in there as well and develop something similar that's outside of your
I hope
patent?
not. I have 52 patents to prevent that.
Right, right, okay. Yeah, it
It
just
doesn't mean they can't. I have just tried very, very hard to make it hard.
right. And it doesn't mean they don't necessarily step over all over your patent anyway and try to manage it in litigation. especially
Well,
a bigger firm.
that's an issue. That's really why you try so many patents, because they can attack this patent. Why you litigate this patent, you still have this patent, and then you litigate this patent. So, really, I mean, one thing pharma has done very well is protecting their drugs.
Hmm.
And so that part I've definitely learned from pharma. Just jam a lot of patents in there, and then through litigation, just keep dragging out another one.
Right. Okay. And when you were on last time, I think you had just ramped up the employee, the headcount a bit. Where are you at now, and who are the kind of
Yeah,
the
I
key?
had 12 people, and we still have a number of consultants. That number hasn't really gone down much. And on top of that, we have 7 or 8 openings. So we'll end up, I would say, with 15 to 20 people. Then that's it.
And are those people going to be in this the Philadelphia area, or can they be located anywhere?
For a while, I said anywhere. I'm starting to be a little bit more circumspect. So I have somebody in Boston, somebody in Michigan, somebody in Florida, and the others are in the generic area. And I'm trying to get more people in the generic area. We are hybrid, okay? You don't have to come into the office all the time. 2 days a week is fine, but I kind of like to see people every so often.
Right. I think that's a general business trend. People are realizing that there's just a certain spontaneity and spark that occurs when people are together, than when things have to be scheduled to create communication. It's the water cooler really does spark innovation. I mean, it's not something that I think all the employees want to hear because they like their flexibility of being able to roll out of bed in
Actually,
their
I think
pajamas.
employees like to come in 1 or 2 days or 3 days a week.
Yeah,
For them, it's good also. Every day, I think I'd get a lot of pushback, but 2 days a week is not it's no pushback.
right. Okay. Yeah, but I guess this week was seeing something in the news about one of the CEOs bringing back their people 3 days a week, and it was, it's like he took them out and shot them all in the backyard or something. I mean, it's people are so used to their time now.
But
Well,
see, in all fairness, I don't understand why somebody would want to sit at home all the time.
exactly. No, I'm here in my office 2 minutes from home, but
Yeah,
there's a reason for that.
yeah, yeah.
Well, Dr. Maccecchini, it's very great to have you on the show again. I appreciate it. And we look forward to hearing more about the phase three. And I'm very eager to have you back again when that's culminated later this year. Thank you very
Well,
much.
thanks a lot, Mike.
Okay. Um, okay. Our next guest on Money Matters TV is Wayne Kimmel, managing partner of 76 Capital. Thank you for watching Money Matters, where your money matters. See you next time.